You need to cook it until the food reaches a minimum internal temperature of 165 degrees Fahrenheit, 74 Celsius for 15 seconds. And when you're cooking...
So ground beef. Ground beef patties, 155 for 15 seconds. Ground meat is different, okay, because you might notice that you have like a meat roast or like a steak. That minimum temperature is 145. Even though they're both beef, ground meat is higher because it's ground. So if anything, if there was any kind of bacteria in the beginning of that meat and you went to ground it, now it's all ground up all throughout that meat. So that's why ground meat has 155 instead of 145. So if you had a steak that had the bacteria on the outside of it, you just hit that on the grill, 145 internal temperature, but ground meat, now it's all spread throughout that meat. So that's why ground beef is higher than a roast of beef.
Ground meat, such as hamburgers or sausage, you should cook it until it reaches the minimum internal temperature of 155 degrees Fahrenheit, 68 Celsius for 15 seconds. If you're cooking injected meat like brine ham and flavor injected roast, you have to cook it until it reaches the minimum internal temperature of 155 degrees Fahrenheit, 68 Celsius for 15 seconds. For pork, beef, veal, and lamb, make sure you cook steaks and chops to a minimum
of 145 for 15 seconds. So there's your pork chops, and there's one of your butter scenes.
Minimum internal temperature of 145 degrees Fahrenheit, 63 Celsius for 15 seconds. For roasts, you need to cook them until they reach a minimum internal temperature of 145 degrees Fahrenheit, 63 Celsius, and hold at that temperature for 4 minutes. Fish should be cooked until it reaches a minimum internal temperature of 100.
So there's our swordfish, 145 for 15 seconds. So that's the same as your steaks or your chops. All right. Yeah, roast is not on there.
45 degrees Fahrenheit, 63 Celsius for 15 seconds.
Use letter D.
There's different guidelines for eggs, and they can be divided into 2 different categories: immediate service and hot held. If you're preparing them to serve right away, they should be cooked to a...
This is something good for those of you who are serving breakfast. There's a different internal temperature for eggs that are going to be immediately given away for service, or if they're going to be hot held. If they're going to be hot held, I think it goes up 10 degrees.
Minimum internal cooking temperature of 145 degrees Fahrenheit, 63 Celsius for 15 seconds. But if they're going to be hot held for service, they should be cooked to a minimum internal temperature of 155 degrees Fahrenheit, 68 Celsius for 15 seconds. When you're cooking food that needs time and temperature control for safety, like eggs, poultry, fish, and meat in the microwave, its minimum internal temperature should be 165 degrees Fahrenheit, 74 Celsius. Be sure to cover the food and rotate or stir it halfway through cooking. And after cooking, let it stand at least 2 minutes to let the temperature even out. But there's more than cooking temps to watch out for. Cooling is just as important. Food that needs time and temperature control for safety must be cooled from 135 degrees to 70 degrees Fahrenheit, 57 to 21 Celsius within 2 hours. And then from 70 degrees to 41 degrees Fahrenheit, 21 to 5 Celsius, or lower in the next 4 hours.
Okay, so this isn't just for chili, this is for cooling anything. You have a total of 6 hours to do it. Within the first 2 hours, you have to get down to 70 degrees. Okay, so that's why earlier we were talking about cooling chili out on the counter, because it's not going to cool down, most likely, depending on the size of the batch, but it's not going to cool down on the counter to 70 degrees in 2 hours. If you don't get to your 70 degrees in 2 hours, then you have to bring it back up to temp and redo the cooling process all over again. And then it will talk about if you get it in within the first hour, if you get it cooled down to 70 in 1 hour, then you have 5 hours to cool it down to 41. It's just a total of 6, and then it has to be that 2 hours. But if you get it shorter than 2 hours, then you make up for it on the other end.
Remember, this is a 2-stage process, 2 hours plus 4 hours. Both stages are very important, and it's critical that you keep your eye on the clock, especially during the first stage. That's because while microorganisms grow well in the temperature danger zone, they grow much faster at temperatures between 125 degrees and 70 degrees Fahrenheit, 52 and 21 Celsius. So food must pass through this temperature range quickly to minimize this growth. Cooling the food to 70 degrees Fahrenheit, 21 Celsius, within 2 hours allows it to pass quickly and safely through the most dangerous part of the temperature danger zone. But if food hasn't reached 70 degrees Fahrenheit, 21 Celsius within 2 hours, you have to either throw it out or reheat it and cool it again. Keep in mind that if you can cool the food from 135 degrees to 70 degrees Fahrenheit, 57 to 21 Celsius, in less than 2 hours, you can use the remaining time to cool it to 41 degrees Fahrenheit, 5 Celsius or lower. However, the total cooling time cannot be longer than 6 hours. For example, if you cool food from 135 degrees to 70 degrees Fahrenheit, 57 to 21 Celsius in 1 hour, you have the remaining 5 hours to get the food to 41 degrees Fahrenheit, 5 Celsius or lower. As always, check your local regulatory requirements. These are reliable times and temperatures, but make sure you check them against your local requirements. Now, when you're talking about cooling food, let's start with the big don't. You should never place large quantities of hot food in a refrigerator to cool. That's because refrigerators are designed to keep cold food cold. Most are not designed to cool hot food quickly. Besides that, placing hot food in a refrigerator may raise the internal temperature of the cooler. You can be warming up the interior and putting all the food stored there at risk. Before you start cooling food, you should begin by reducing its size to more workable portions. This allows it to cool faster. So cut large food items into smaller pieces or divide large containers of food into smaller containers or shallow pans. Once you've done that, there's a number of ways to cool food quickly and safely. Now here's the 3 most common methods. 1, you can put the food in an ice water bath. You divide the food into smaller containers, then place them into a sink or large pot filled with ice water.
Even at this point, just something to add to it, to make the process go even faster, have someone be there stirring it. I know I don't believe in having pointless jobs or watching water boil, but the coolness will only work from the outside in. So if you're rotating that chili or whatever it is, you're rotating the coolness also. So just make the process go even faster.
Then stir the food frequently to cool it faster and more evenly. 2, food will cool even faster if you stir it with an ice paddle. An ice paddle is hollow, so it can be filled with ice or with water and then frozen. 3, you can place food in a blast chiller or tumble chiller. Now, blast chillers move cold air across food at high speeds to remove heat. They're especially useful in chilling large quantities of food like several pans of chili. Whenever you can, use a combination of these methods to cool food quicker. That's enough on cooling. Proper reheating of food has to be done just as carefully. Food that needs time and temperature control for safety that has been previously cooked, then reheated for hot holding, must be moved through the temperature danger zone as quickly as possible. You'll need to reheat it to an internal temperature of 165 degrees Fahrenheit, 74 Celsius, for 15 seconds within 2 hours. If the food hasn't reached this temperature within 2 hours, throw it out. With all the buffet service we have here, proper food holding is a subject that's near and dear to my heart. So, let me go over the general rules with you that you've got to follow to keep your food safe. Regularly check the internal temperature of both your hot and cold food using a calibrated thermometer fitted with the appropriate type of probe. Cold food that needs time and temperature control for safety must be held at an internal temperature of 41 degrees Fahrenheit, 5 Celsius or lower. And hot food that needs time and temperature control for safety must be held at an internal temperature of 135 degrees Fahrenheit, 57 Celsius or higher. But remember, never reheat food and equipment that isn't designed to do it. For example, you shouldn't use the steam table to reheat any food products. You've also got to check the temperature of food at least every 4 hours. If the food is not at the proper temperature, you have to throw it out. If you want to avoid wasting food, you should do what I do and check the temperature every 2 hours to leave time for corrective action. This might sound basic or obvious, but always cover the food to protect food from contaminants. The covers also help maintain the internal temperature of food. After handling food safely and cooking it properly, you don't want to risk contamination when serving it. That means training your kitchen and service staff properly and setting standards and procedures for any self-service areas. You need to train your staff to follow these procedures for serving food safely. Your staff should only use clean and sanitized utensils for serving, and they should use separate utensils for each food item, then clean and sanitize them properly after changing serving tasks. On top of that, the utensils should be cleaned and sanitized at least once every 4 hours during continuous use. You need to take every measure to minimize bare hand contact with food that's cooked or ready to eat. Your staff should handle food with tongs, deli sheets, or gloves. Some regulatory authorities allow bare hand contact in an operation if they've received prior approval. To do this, they must first outline policies for employee health and training in hand washing and personal hygiene. Check your local regulatory requirements to see if this applies to your operation. You also have to establish and enforce safe food handling practices with everybody on your staff. Everyone should take care to handle glassware and dishes properly. They shouldn't touch the food contact areas of plates, bowls, glasses, or cups. When a server holds a dish, they should do it holding the bottom or the edge. Cups should be held by their handles, and glassware should be held by the middle, bottom, or stem. They should also be careful to hold flatware and utensils at the handle. And make sure your flatware storage area is set up so servers grasp handles, not food contact surfaces. When your servers are getting ice, they should use ice scoops or tongs to do it. And they should never scoop ice with their bare hands or use a glass or cup because it might chip or break. It's also important to remember to store ice scoops in a sanitary location and not in the ice. The last area I want to talk about is self-service. Now, I know from experience that buffets and food bars can be a real challenge. That's because so many people have no idea how easy it is for food to be contaminated. A lot of our work here is protecting the customers from themselves. The best way to prevent contamination in the buffet area is to have it monitored closely by employees trained in food safety. You should follow these guidelines to prevent contamination and time temperature abuse. Remember to use sneeze guards or food shields to protect the food on display. The sneeze guards should be located 14 inches, 36 centimeters above the food counter, and shields should extend 7 inches, 18 centimeters beyond the food. You also need to identify all food items on the buffet. That means labeling all the items on your food bar. Lastly, customers can't be allowed to refill soiled plates or use soiled flatware at the food bar. Like I said before, there's a lot to know and a lot to watch out for. The busier it gets, the more closely you have to pay attention to the details. And I mean all the details. Sometimes it seems like you have to keep one eye on the time and the other eye on the temperature and the eyes in the back of your head watching everything else. So train your people right. They can be a lot of help to you. Every one of them is like an extra pair of trained eyes.
Okay, so for quiz 6, we hit most of all of those. All of those were false. Coolers are not designed to cool food. They're designed to keep cold foods cold. Turkey is 165 for 15 seconds, not 155. Cooling from 135 to 70 within 2 hours, not 3 hours. And then fish in a microwave should be 165. Anything in a microwave is 165. We went over thawing, the different ways of thawing food. The only letter for the minimum internal temperatures we didn't go over was the glazed carrots for hot holding. That should be letter E for 135. So that should go C, A, C, B as in boy, and then E. And then cooling we talked about. You can do ice bath and stir it, ice paddles, the blast chillers. But first you should always just separate it into smaller containers. No matter which method you're using, it will always cool faster in smaller containers. Quiz 7, hold cold TCS food at an internal temperature of 41 or lower. That's true. 41 or lower is out of the temperature danger zone. Hold hot TCS food at internal temperature of 120. That's false. That's in our temperature danger zone. Your operation may be allowed to hold chicken salad at room temperature if the salad has a label specifying that it must be thrown out after 8 hours. Did they hit on that? I don't think they did. Okay, so that is false. I think it's after 4 hours or 6. Is it 6 hours? 4. It's 4. Okay. So what it's saying is you can put it out on a table without any kind of regulation of hot or cold or anything like that, but after 4 hours it has to be just thrown out. And then when holding TCS food for service, an internal temperature must be checked every 4 hours.
No.
That's true. They recommend to do it every 2 hours, so if something isn't right, then you have time to correct it, but you have to do it every 4 hours. They recommend 2, but you have to do it 4, so that's one of those tricky ones again. Each picture, ice, you should always use a metal scoop, metal or plastic scoop, never use a glass. If the glass breaks in the ice thing, the whole thing has to be empty. It's virtually impossible to find a piece of glass in a thing of ice. The silverware, always hold them by the stem. It's the same with the cup, your fingers. And then servers, they're obviously not washing their hands as much as the people in the kitchen. So it's just even more important to reiterate that when you're serving, because you're most likely not washing your hands as much as the people back in the kitchen. We talked about why not to use a glass to scoop ice, what could happen if the food has not been held at the correct temperature. That just means that pathogens or bacteria could be growing on food because it's being held at harmful levels. I'm going to skip, you guys have quiz 10 next, right? Okay, I just really want to get to cleaning and sanitizing rather than what's 8 and 9. It's food safety management system. That's your like HACCP policies and stuff like that. Those are probably already developed for you. HACCP is critical control points, hazard analysis critical control points. So just any type, so say if you're preparing a chicken breast, it's just identifying every point that could go wrong with making that chicken breast and then what to do for the corrective action. So that's HACCP, but those are probably already developed for you. So that's quiz 8, and then quiz 9 is safe facilities and pest management, which again you probably won't have a ton of control over or involvement with, so I just want to skip to quiz 10, cleaning and sanitizing, because that definitely is something that you guys will be doing. And are we at like 15 minutes, 20 minutes left? Because I think we started at 8:30, right?
Okay, that covers sanitary equipment and facilities. Now, I want to talk about cleaning and sanitizing.
I want to stop here at Whistling River Amusement Park because in my book, their food safety practices are second to none.
Alan Schumer is a guy who knows a lot about good cleaning and sanitizing practices. To get a handle on cleaning and sanitizing, you have to know the difference between cleaning and sanitizing, the properties and uses of cleaning agents, the different methods of sanitizing, and the different types of dishwashing machines and their proper operation. You'll also have to know how to clean and sanitize equipment using a 3-compartment sink. Then there's the proper storage of utensils, tableware, and equipment, the proper storage of cleaning tools and supplies, and the proper use and storage of hazardous materials. Cleaning is the process of removing food and other types of soil from a surface, such as a prep table or plate, while sanitizing is the process of reducing the number of pathogens on a clean surface to safe levels.
Effective cleaning and sanitizing is a two-step process. The surfaces have got to first be cleaned and rinsed before being sanitized.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Everything in the operation has got to be kept clean. But any surface that comes in contact with food, such as knives, utensils, and cutting boards, has to be cleaned and sanitized.
So all food contact surfaces must be washed, then rinsed, and then sanitized. And you have to do it after each use. Anytime you begin working with another type of food, anytime you're interrupted during a task and the tools or items you've been working with may have been contaminated, and at 4-hour intervals if items are constantly used. These aren't options or something that should be done most of the time. These are practices that should be followed all of the time.
Cleaning agents are chemical compounds that remove food, soil, rust, stains, minerals, and other deposits.
Since cleaning agents all have different properties, you should ask your supplier to help you select the ones that will meet your needs. There are different types of cleaners, and they've got specific uses.
There are general purpose detergents, which remove fresh dirt from floors, walls, ceilings, prep surfaces, and most equipment and utensils. Heavy-duty detergents, on the other hand, remove wax, aged or dried dirt, and baked-on grease. Dishwasher detergents are an example. Then there are solvent cleaners, which are often called degreasers, and these are alkaline detergents containing a grease-dissolving agent. They work well in areas where grease is burned on and are usually only effective at full strength. Acid cleaners, which are also called delimers, are used on mineral deposits and other soils that alkaline cleaners can't remove. Acid cleaners vary in type and strength and are often used to remove scale in dishwashing machines and steam tables. Abrasive cleaners contain a scouring agent that helps scrub out hard-to-remove soil. If you've got pots and pans with baked-on food, this is what's often used to remove it. Remember to use abrasive cleaners carefully because they can scratch surfaces.
There's 2 methods used to sanitize surfaces: heat sanitizing and chemical sanitizing. One way to heat sanitize tableware, utensils, or equipment is to immerse them in hot water.
Number 4, true or false?
To be effective, the water must be at least 171 degrees Fahrenheit, 77 Celsius, and the items have to be immersed for 30 seconds.
When you're heat sanitizing by immersion, you should use a thermometer to check water temperature. It might also be necessary to install a heating device to maintain this temperature.
The other heat sanitizing method is the high-temperature dishwashing machine. This uses hot water to sanitize tableware, utensils, and other items. To check the water temperature in these machines, attach temperature-sensitive labels or tape, or a high-temperature probe to items that will be run through the machine. Now, the other way to sanitize uses chemicals. The three most common types of chemical sanitizers are chlorine, iodine, and quaternary ammonium compounds, or quats. Chemical sanitizers are regulated by state and federal environmental protection agencies. And a list of approved sanitizers is available from the federal government. Work with your chemical supplier to choose the right sanitizers for your place.
Detergent sanitizer blends can sometimes be used to sanitize items. If you use a detergent sanitizer blend, use it once to clean and a second time to sanitize.
Tableware, utensils, and equipment can be chemically sanitized by immersing them in a specific concentration of sanitizing solution for a specific amount of time. You can also rinse, swab, or spray them with the appropriate sanitizing solution. Chemical sanitizers are mixed with water until the right concentration, the proper ratio of sanitizer to water, is reached. The right concentration is critical because concentration below those required in your jurisdiction or recommended by the manufacturer could fail to sanitize objects. On the other hand, if the concentration is higher than recommended, they can be unsafe. When that happens, they can leave an odor or bad taste, and can even corrode metals. You should always measure the concentration when using a sanitizer test kit, which registers the strength of the concentration in parts per million, or ppm. But make sure the test kit is designed for the sanitizer you're using. If you don't have the right test kit, they're usually available from the manufacturer or your chemical supplier. One last thing about the concentration of a sanitizing solution. You have to check it frequently, since the sanitizer loses its strength during use. Temperature is another factor that can influence the effectiveness of chemical sanitizers, so make sure you follow the manufacturer's recommendations for the proper temperature. Contact time is also important. For a sanitizing solution to kill pathogens, it has to make contact with the object for a specific amount of time. Manufacturer's recommendations should provide you with all the information you need. The pH and hardness of your water can also affect how well a sanitizer works. You can get this information from your municipality. Then you should work with your supplier to identify the right amount of sanitizer to use for your water.
Okay, now let's talk about the different types of dishwashing machines and how they work. High-temperature machines rely on hot water to clean and sanitize, so the water temperature is critical.
If it's not hot enough, items won't be properly sanitized.
They're going over
If it's
to
too
the
hot,
bottom
it
of
could
page
vaporize
10.
before tableware
about
and
its
utensils have been
pH.
sanitized.
The water
And
hardness right now
there's
is
also the
room
possibility
temperature.
that extremely hot water could bake food onto an item.
The dishwasher must be equipped with a built-in thermometer that measures water temperature at the manifold, the point where the water sprays into the tank. The temperature of the final sanitizing rinse must be at least 180 degrees Fahrenheit, 82 Celsius, to be effective. For stationary rack single temperature machines, the sanitizing rinse must be at least 165 degrees Fahrenheit, 74 Celsius. Operations that clean and sanitize a lot of tableware may need to install a heating device. This device will make sure the machines have enough hot water. The second type of dishwashing machines are chemical sanitizing machines. These can clean and sanitize items at much lower temperatures. Since different sanitizers require different rinse water temperatures, it's important to follow the dishwashing temperature guidelines provided by the manufacturer. All dishwashing machines should be operated according to the recommendations provided by the manufacturer.
But no matter what type of machine you use, there are general procedures you should follow when cleaning and sanitizing tableware, utensils, and related items.
That means you have to check the machine for cleanliness at least once a day and clean it whenever it's needed. You need to clear detergent trays and spray nozzles of food and foreign objects. And you should remove mineral deposits caused by hard water using an acid cleaner on the machine whenever it's necessary. Make sure the detergent and sanitizer dispensers are properly filled. Before you send the soiled items through, you need to scrape, rinse, or soak items before washing, and pre-soak items with dried-on food. The dish racks need to be loaded correctly. That means making sure all surfaces are exposed to the spray action, using racks designed for the items being washed, and not overloading racks. You also need to check water temperatures and pressure following the manufacturer's recommendations. As each rack comes out of the machine, check it for soiled items. Once all the items are cleaned and sanitized, you have to let everything air dry. Now, don't use towels because they can recontaminate items you just cleaned.
Finally, keep the dishwashing machine in good repair, using the basic maintenance measures I talked about and any service agreement that you have with the manufacturer.
You can also wash items using a 3-compartment sink. A properly set up station for a 3-compartment sink includes an area for rinsing away food or for scraping food into garbage containers, drain boards to hold both soiled and cleaned items, a thermometer to measure water temperature, chemical test strips to check sanitizer concentration, and a clock with a second hand that allows employees to time how long items have been immersed in the sanitizing sink. Before cleaning and sanitizing items in a 3-compartment sink, each sink and all work surfaces have to be cleaned and sanitized. There's 5 steps for cleaning and sanitizing tableware, utensils, and equipment in a 3-compartment sink. Step 1. Rinse, scrape, or soak all items before washing. Step 2. Wash items in the first sink in a detergent solution that's at least 110 degrees Fahrenheit, 43 Celsius. You should use a brush, cloth, or nylon scrub pad to loosen the remaining soil. And make sure you replace the detergent solution when the suds are gone or the water is dirty. Step 3. Immerse or spray rinse items in the second sink. You have to remove all traces of food and detergent. And if you're using the immersion method, replace the rinse water when it becomes cloudy or dirty. Step 4. Sanitize the rinsed items in the third sink by immersing them in a chemical sanitizing solution. Alternately, you can immerse them in hot water that's at least 171 degrees Fahrenheit, 77 Celsius, for 30 seconds. Step 5. Air dry all items. Don't use a towel.
Once utensils, tableware, and equipment are clean, sanitized, and dry, store them so they stay that way. That means storing tableware and utensils at least 6 inches, 15 centimeters, off the floor, keeping everything covered or otherwise protected from dirt and condensation, and cleaning drawers and shelves before clean items are stored. You also have to clean trays and carts used to carry clean tableware and utensils. Make sure that this is done on a daily basis or more often if necessary.
When it comes to cleaning the operation, there are several things to keep in mind. Non-food contact surfaces, such as floors, ceilings, equipment exteriors, restrooms, and walls, must be cleaned regularly. This will keep dust and dirt, food residue, and other debris from building up.
To do these jobs, your staff will need the right tools, but if you're not careful, the tools themselves can contaminate surfaces. You can avoid this by replacing any cleaning tools that are worn, and by cleaning the tools before putting them away. Assigning tools for specific tasks will also help. For example, you can use one set of tools for cleaning food contact surfaces and another for non-food contact surfaces. And here's a hint. Using color-coded tools can help keep them separate. You have to be just as careful when it comes to cleaning towels. Never use towels meant for food spills for any other purpose, and store them in a sanitizer solution between uses. Always keep towels that come in contact with raw meat, fish, or poultry separate from other cleaning towels. All your cleaning tools and chemicals have to be placed in a storage area away from food and food preparation sites to avoid contamination. That storage area should have things like hooks for hanging cleaning tools to dry, a floor drain for dumping dirty water, and a utility sink for filling buckets and washing cleaning tools. Oh, and by the way, never clean tools anywhere but in that utility sink. Some of the cleaning solutions you'll use have to be considered hazardous materials, and by definition, hazardous materials always pose some risk of chemical contamination. You should reduce your risk by working with your chemical suppliers and purchase only those chemicals that are approved to use in a restaurant or food service establishment. Then you have to store them in their original containers away from food and food preparation areas. If chemicals are transferred to a new container, it's got to be properly labeled. When disposing of chemicals, you should follow the instructions on the label and any local regulations that apply. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, has requirements for using chemicals. OSHA requires chemical manufacturers and suppliers to provide a Material Safety Data Sheet, MSDS, for each hazardous chemical they sell. Employees have a right to see an MSDS for any hazardous chemical they work with, so you must keep these sheets accessible. There are 3 things you need to do to develop an effective cleaning program in your operation. First, you need to create a master cleaning schedule. Second, you need to train your employees to follow it. And third, you must monitor the program to make sure it works. Your master cleaning schedule should identify what should be cleaned and who should do it. It should also spell out step-by-step how these items should be cleaned. And finally, it should tell you when to do it. While employees should clean and sanitize items as needed, you should schedule major cleaning when food will not be contaminated or service will not be affected. That's usually after closing. Training is critical to the success of a cleaning program. Employees need to know what you want them to do and how to do it. Once you put the cleaning program in place, keep an eye on things to make sure it's working.
Now, proper cleaning and sanitizing procedures have to be followed in detail if they're to be effective. And the effectiveness of these procedures is critical to food safety.
All right, so quiz 10, the true and the false. Surfaces must be sanitized before they are clean. False, they need to be clean before they're sanitized, and they need to be rinsed before they're clean. Cleaning reduces the number of pathogens on a surface to safe levels. False, only sanitizing does that. Utensils cleaned and sanitized in a 3-compartment sink should be dried with a clean towel. False, everything should air dry. Soaking items for 30 seconds in water at least 171 Fahrenheit is an acceptable way to sanitize items. That's true. Food contact, list 4 instances when food contact surfaces must be cleaned and sanitized. So after they're used, before food handlers start working with a different type of food, so say you went from meat and poultry to fresh vegetables, you want to clean and sanitize. Anytime food handlers are interrupted during a task, so if they have to stop and do something, then they should clean and sanitize in between. And then after 4 hours, if they're in constant use. So say you're fabricating chicken for 4 hours, it'd be miserable. But say you're doing that for 4 hours, after 4 hours you have to stop and clean and sanitize, even if you're doing the same job. I don't know if they went over this, I don't think they did, but this is to clean in-place equipment, so like stationary equipment. So going down, it should go 2, 1, 6, 5, 7, 3, 4. So basically you want to take off all the things, remove any food, clean, and then sanitize, and let it allow the air dry. 5 factors that affect the sanitizer's effectiveness. They kind of went over this here and there, but the concentration of it, the temperature, contact time, so how long something has to be in contact with it for it to be effective, water hardness, and pH levels. On the back section of quiz 10, going down, it should go 4, 5, 3, 1, 2. Okay, and then I just have a really quick video from the National Restaurant Association, just to go over cleaning and sanitizing. A surface. Real quick, it's 1 minute.
How to clean and sanitize a surface. To clean and sanitize a surface, start with scraping or removing food bits from the surface. Next, wash the surface with an approved cleaning solution and towel. Then, rinse the surface using clean water and a towel. Now, sanitize the surface using the correct sanitizing solution. Make sure the entire surface has come into contact with the sanitizing solution. Finally, allow the surface to air dry. How to clean and sanitize a surface.
Okay, so and depending on what kind of sanitizer you have, those might not be the steps that you take, but that's why I wanted to show that. I used one sanitizer in Miami this summer that you had to kind of like squeeze it out and let it sit for a minute before you could wipe it up. So you have to kind of go along with what kind of sanitizers you have in your facility. But there are different processes and some you don't have to rinse, some you do, some you air dry. So it's just you have to know that there are different types of sanitizers and different ways to use them. So.
I have a question.
Yes. Yes.
Go ahead. When we did the one, I think it was in Elkhorn at the school, the man that was doing it said not to put the bleach on, have the bleach in your soapy water and then spray the sanitizer because it would inactivate the sanitizer, so the
Right.
sanitizer wouldn't work,
Right.
correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And it depends on the it depends on the sanitizer, what it has in it, what you're using to rinse it down or wash it or anything. Those are all different variables that
Yeah,
can.
well, he made it sound
be
like if
different.
you were using bleached water,
Mhm.
soapy water to wash stuff, and then it would have to totally dry
Yes.
before you
That's
could
why I was
use
talking
the
about it in
sanitizer.
Miami when
Yeah.
we had to rinse and wash. We had to let that sit for a minute and then we had to sanitize.
So, but you could eliminate the bleach from the
Yeah, you
soapy
could, yeah.
water and then be able to spray.
Mhm. It just all depends on the type of sanitizer that you're using. It's all different types of variables for that.
The inspector, when she came at the beginning of last year. So we were just washing with our soapy water,
Mhm.
and then we sanitize. Wrong. So you wash, you rinse with plain water is what she said,
Yes.
and then you can sanitize.
That's how how they did it in the
so
video.
your rinse is plain water.
Yes. But it's not always like that. It
Yeah.
depends on the sanitizer.
Well, we all, I think, use the same, the ready to use.
Okay. And some you can just spray on, and it's just it's all different.
You
types.
think you got it right?
But yeah, that's how in that video they rinsed with regular water.
That's right. Okay.
Yes, because some of them, what they're saying is what's in the soapy water could counteract with the sanitizer, so they have that extra step in there to rinse.
Yeah.
But some you don't need to do that.
Yep, I've been doing this for how long, and I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, just plain water? She goes, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Anything else? That's all I got for you. So sorry it was a little overwhelming. It's a lot to fit in, and thank you. 3 hours. So. Usually I do that in 8 or 16 or even more than that. So. Any other questions before it's in your regular water. So if when you get your water tested, it should give you some kind of report, your hardness, your pH levels, and everything. Yeah. But it's just in your it's the pH of your regular water. Yeah.
As far as your time for today, if everyone is okay with this, you can just put that on your first time sheet, unless you want a separate check, I mean, what is today? You'll be coming in, I think, before the end of the month. I don't know what everybody has planned for their kitchens, but, so you'll have like that setting up cleaning day, to put on also, so you'll have that date and today. As we were going through this, I guess one of the things that went through my head is they were talking about a separate area for eating while you're at work. Do you all know where your designated area is to stop and have your food or whatever? You know where that is in your kitchen? Everyone has that? Okay. Just wasn't sure. I'm not always there when you're doing these things, so I wanted to ask that. What else? Any other questions or comments? Or we will have another training on meal pattern or meal components, offer versus serve, that kind of thing. I've been in touch with DPI. We just haven't set the date yet. More than likely, it will be like after work one day, you know, from like 1:30 to 4 o'clock or something like that. So everyone has to have their ongoing training for the year. If you work less than 20 hours a week, you need 4 hours. If you work more than 20 hours a week, you need 6 hours. And then the managers in the kitchen need 10. I know some of this didn't apply today to everyone in every kitchen. I feel bad for you, Amanda, because I know that, you know, you're in there for a short time bringing the kids up at lunchtime, and now you have all this knowledge that I guess you can apply it.
A lot of this stuff I use it at home.
Yeah. But
especially the internal temperatures. It's the easiest way not to overcook food.
yes, we're done.
Copy of our menus. I forgot my
Not with me, but I can get it if you want to come back to the Marcian's kitchen.
Thank you so much. I was thinking of the produce part of it, that what I needed to order for that only
Okay.
and so then I'll order it on Wednesday rather than order it on Wednesday. So all I need is for that Tuesday. But anyway, I don't have. And our open sesame
Oh no, I like
Thank you.
For how long? Okay. Oh, you're coming? Yes, ma'am. Okay. I'm not over that way. I have to go get my next week. Oh, that was. I know, but I'm not going to. Oh, I'm Wednesday to work in the kitchen, so we need to get the kitchen before. Oh, you're so wonderful. Okay, I'll come find you.
But Tammy won't be there.
Well, I'll be in the building.
What if I could hire somebody from like
Get it all done.
Oh, you're going to be gone Thursday.
Oh, Sophia. Right. No. Yeah. Tell Crystal and her if I ever get to go. I never heard She probably wants to do something. They don't forget. You might have
Right.
even if I don't have the Brooklyn, that's fun too. But she's really fun to play with, I have to go find my Maria. I brought her with me.
I probably can't answer it. It's hard question.
Okay.
Okay. So when administration is in the fridge, regardless of we don't put Monday? We put 7 days. Yes. I'm only, that's why I'm custodial. The way I do it. You do two different. Yeah, wouldn't it help to have both? That's what I would think. I bet they make a sticker that's like that. And prepared on, by.
Because when we make our ranch dressing, we put it on the bottom of the thing when we made it.
I guess just to avoid confusion, if you're only putting one date on there, make sure that you say, also say, but I would put that on there, used by such and such, because if somebody came in, we have to come there, they might not know what it was by. Getting up on a step.
I haven't done this in a while here. Why don't you go down one step? Yes, go back and go down. One or the other. Forward or backwards. Okay, I'm back. Don't trip on my shoes. All right.
Something made me think of it just now. When I went to vote, Debbie was direct friends. Yeah, talking to me about Debbie. Oh, she says, you know, she lies. I know, but sometimes she does that. Anyway, she said, well, you know, her husband was really nice. He was there living with her for some time. Oh. And then his mother died. And when his mother died, he got money. I didn't know that. Oh, yeah, he was really nice. And then she said the same thing I think she had told us, that she went to live with her son. She said, no, she didn't go with her son. I said, no, I know.
So where is she now?
She's involved in
So it'd be better to have the use by date on there, so you don't have to stand in the freezer and figure out, okay, I made it today. But I mean,
I know, but I've known her since I was and so anyway, she said, well, you know, her husband was very nice. See ya. When he was living with her.
This was
Actually, very, very.
In all the years I've been, nobody
Yeah.
had any sense.
Really? Yeah. And then she said,
How's that? Yeah, it's actually been pretty good. So I get back into the kitchen.
Yeah.
I already had talked with Lauren. I'll be talking with Roxanne, because I'm not going to stop doing all looking all Good. Not that to say that it'll do any good, because it probably won't.
but
it needs
but
to
it'll
go-
make it won't make it worse.
It needs to go on record. I'm just not sure. Yeah.
That should have all been covered.
Yeah. Yeah, I should have. So, all right, I gotta go on. My car's all the way in the back by custodial.
See, because I've always, if the furnace.
Jack?
He's always driving Miss Daisy.
Yeah, for sure, thank you. Okay.
Job to job.
Take you later. Talk to you later.
And that I put a date on there. And the date
Yeah, and a goofy thing was.
she's ready to graduate.
So
And I think that's correct.
Boston
I don't know.
and Coles at the graduation. They had to take it for Riley too.
Oh, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the paperwork.
And so I met her sister, and I'm looking at her, and I can see the resemblance. I said, oh yeah, I said, I look at you and I can see Jen B. I told her I'd call you Jen B.
Yeah, I suppose.
But anyway,
The date we pull it.
so
Actually, I take a piece of.
she's there with
and I put on
Joe.
the tape.
Yeah.
The date
She's there with Joe,
and the date I intend to.
and then
Sounds
her
like I
ex
need to get
comes
everybody some stickers.
Yeah,
and
stickers would be great.
look, and my daughter-in-law goes,
Yeah, right now we're using tape.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I went, yeah. Well, I know Shelley when she was married to Mark.
She goes, oh, hi.
So yeah, we all know Shelley. So that was goofy, you know. So you don't realize how.
Otherwise, we had a regular door, stick a probe in there, and you don't know.
See you,
how
Donna.
accurate those
Bye-bye.
are.
Soon, I guess. Glad you guys were here.
Yeah. Anyway.
Where did we get these pens from?
Yeah.
I didn't bring these pens.
They're the box figures.
Yeah, Brad, Angela brought them?
So we'll see you.
All right. Are you going to come to the elementary school for that registration
That's what we
night?
were talking
Or
about,
open
because I
house?
still have to go to Hannah's too that night.
Okay.
So, like, I'm trying to figure it out, if my husband will just bring her, or if I'll go quick, and then meet Brenda.
What time, oh, so she's at Brookwood Middle still?
Yeah, 8th grade.
Um,
So say it.